That's it. You cannot do politics without violence. Like, violence is happening to you. Violence is happening around you every goddamn moment of the day. You're just conditioned. You're primed into thinking that it's not real and it's not happening.
Achieve these goals?
Yes.
Almost all of the people protesting against the Nazis and Klansmen in Charlottesville were peaceful, but not all of them.
Do you ever get tired of hiding your identity?
What are your thoughts on peaceful protests?
What's the most extreme thing you've done?
I
so
have
dumb.
been involved in anti-fascist organizing and activism for 10 years now, I suppose. I don't think that any person can speak on behalf of a group. So I'm not speaking on behalf of like Antifa as such. I'm speaking on behalf of sort of myself as someone who is anti-fascist.
Hi, I'm Emily.
Hi, Emily, I'm Casper.
Like the friendly ghost?
Like the friendly ghost.
Love that.
This is my first time hearing about Antifa. What is it?
What the fuck? Yo, I want to be on whatever the fuck she's on, brother. That's awesome. I'm sorry. There is nothing cooler than being in 2023 and being like, what's an Antifa? Because, like, when you know what it is, I mean, you're probably sick and tired of hearing it, okay? You're probably sick and fucking tired of hearing it. And you definitely have some level of brain rot. Such bliss to be that fucking oblivious. What's the Antifa, she said. God, I love her.
Antifa is shorthand for anti-fascist, and that sort of includes the gamut of the bad isms, you know, so anti-racism, anti-transphobia, anti-Islamophobia, anti-sexism. But I think another core tenet of it is probably also anti-capitalism.
Do you consider yourself an organization?
No. Antifa is not anything remotely close to an organization. It's sort of decentralized and autonomous. And what I mean by that is, like, there's no central decision-making body. In fact, there is no center.
What do you define a fascist as?
Someone whose political beliefs and values...
I mean, he's been 100% right so far. It's correct. You can say take a shower all you want, but he's not wrong. It's a decentralized movement. It's not organized like that. There is no, like, fucking Antifa headquarters. There's no Antifa LLC that you can point to. It's just, in many instances, a bunch of guys that get together during protests and say, hey, we want to defend some of these protesters from counter-protesters who are insane and will probably do something violent to them. And then there's also plenty of people who are like riot tourists and people who enjoy getting buck wild, you know what I mean? Those I would say are not necessarily ideologically bound, but instead just like a bunch of random people who like breaking shit. Black Bloc is the militant faction of anti-fascist action. Anti-fascist action can revolve around, you know, stopping a Nazi speaker from speaking at a particular event, to your grandfather going to Germany and freeing people in camps. So Black Bloc in and of itself is just a militant strategy of anti-fascist action. It's not like people who are like, oh my God, I'm a part of Black Bloc in Antifa headquarters. It's a tactic. Why don't we question fascists with such scrutiny as we do Antifa? Why do anti-fascists have to constantly defend their existence? I mean, what do you mean? Because, one, they're anti-capitalist and we live under a neoliberal hegemony. And two, yeah, under the neoliberal hegemony, if you are acting out in a violent manner, in a way that, like, people are not used to, i.e., the tear gassing of protesters is not considered violence because it's done at the hands of the state. The state has a monopoly on violence, but it's actually violence if you take a leaf blower to that fucking tear gas and blow that tear gas back at the cops. Then it's considered like assault with a deadly weapon. Like your intentions are to execute cops. This has happened time and time again during the protests. So people are geared into believing that any kind of action, any kind of militant action that is not done by state actors or not done by their ideological defenders, like, you know, brown shirt style paramilitary organizations like the fucking 3%ers and whatnot, is actually completely unacceptable and should be punished. Some people also, like in the Republican Party as well, don't consider the Proud Boys to be great. They don't consider January 6ers to be great. They think that that is too far because liberals, because everyone is a liberal at the end of the day in America, left or right, doesn't matter. And ultimately, liberalism dictates that you can't rock the boat. You are fine under the system. You don't want to offend the sensibilities of others. You don't want to be not civil. And there's nothing more uncivil than breaking down the state monopoly of violence.
And the world they're trying to create is one of hierarchy and racialized domination, nationalistic domination, and xenophobia. And not everybody from any specific group shares exactly the same principles, but
right now, from my perspective, Antifa is being portrayed as like government enemy #1, right? Like, oh, Antifa is going against America. Antifa is destroying the American philosophy, I guess, the way of life.
Maybe you feel like this is like a good thing. Like you guys want to be known as like big, top, violent, extreme dogs. I don't know. You tell me.
yeah, totally. I think nowadays what it is has been largely defined by the media. You can't see me, but I'm wearing like full black bloc. I'm wearing all black. I have a black balaclava on, and I think like that is what Antifa oftentimes means. This militant, black-clad protester.
Do you ever get tired of hiding your identity?
It's kind of fun, actually. Putting on a matching outfit with like dozens of other people in a street protest, everyone just becomes a part of this like moving organism where you can sort of do anything and be anyone you want and not face the consequences of those actions, right? You know, no face, no case is sort of this term that gets thrown around a lot.
So I guess that's interesting because, like, with this belief, do you think it allows people to?
This is, I don't know. I haven't made up my mind yet. It feels more like a bed or something.
Be more violent without consequences?
Sure. I mean, it makes it more possible to use violence to achieve my means or something like that, because I know deep down in my heart and in my soul that it has to be done.
Would you say Antifa or even yourself think that violence is justified to achieve these goals?
Yes. Violence has been a part of what it means to be a human being. The world that we live in today with all the bombs and all the guns and
politics is about distribution of resources and power. One of the expressions of said power is violence. Who gets to do it? Who gets to be the victims of it? Why is it adequate? So, of course, there is no political movement without violence. Violence can be either the direct hand-to-hand combat violence that you experience when you go into a fucking ring or a street fight. Violence can also take the systemic form of structural violence. It can take the form of systemic violence in the form of like environmental racism. You know, building oil rigs in black and brown neighborhoods that are causing black and brown children to have higher likelihood of being I can't think. Asthma prone. Other aspects of violence are, like I said, the more invisible side of violence, like the structural violence of poverty. Doesn't always have to be directly physical, and it is almost always about who gets to be the victims and who gets to be the purveyors. When the state does violence, That's perfectly allowed. That is completely allowed. If you are revolutionary and engaging in a revolutionary act of violence against the British monarchy, for example, and you develop a state in the aftermath of said violence, then that is perfectly justified. If you are engaging in indigenous genocide, ethnic cleansing, re-education, stealing of children, then that is obviously direct acts of violence, but that kind of direct acts of violence are almost always normalized as long as the state that you live as a continuation, that you live under as a continuation of said acts of genocidal violence is still in existence. Okay? The entire, like every facet of our existence works to make that kind of violence feel normal. And any kind of violence outside of that feels abnormal, scary, gives me the ick, ew, gross. Okay? A cop can just go in and detain a person. They can rob you. They can steal your money in the form of civil asset forfeitures. They can kill you without any kind of legal scrutiny from the higher ups. That is abhorrently violent. That is not even the case in many other countries, as a matter of fact. And yet, here in the United States of America, that kind of violence is so normalized that people turn around and get mad at the lady yesterday who like called the cops on a prank and then got arrested and then, got her boyfriend tased in the nuts. They got more mad at the lady than they got at the cops. The cops are human. They're not supposed to behave that way, but that's the expectation. That's how normal that level of violence is. And the inverse of that is also true. The level of violence against cops by the likes of a black bloc, Antifa guy is also seen as like uniquely unjustifiable. Completely unjustifiable. These are cops. I watch a lot of TV. I read a lot of news. I learned a lot in school, and every single instance, every single facet of existence, every single cultural output I received always told me that the cops are good. They're there to protect and serve. So why are you coming at me now trying to make it seem like it's okay to like defend yourself against the cop? What are you, some kind of fucking terrorist? Get the fuck out of here. That's un-American. That is how propaganda works alongside the police brutality that you experience on a daily basis. That's just, that's the reason why when you see Antifa people, you're like, oh, these guys are gross and scary. Someone asks in the chat, like, why do you think people think these guys are gross and scary? That's what it is. Anti-fascism is a just act. I'm sorry. I don't give a fuck. I know there are plenty of cringe LARPers everywhere, but ultimately, anti-fascism is a completely just and completely moral action, okay? Yes, you should always say no to fascism. So stupid.
And all the starving people and the pollution, these are all different types of like violences or something that are happening around the world. And I think our capacity for violence is sort of like that which has been taken from us and concentrated in the hands of the police.
So you're against the police, like no police?
Fundamentally, yes. One of the most memorable experiences of my life was like watching the 3rd Precinct burn to the ground in Minneapolis during the George Floyd uprising. And that was the first time in American history that that's ever happened. And within days, hundreds or thousands of police cars across the country were like on fire.
You don't think that kind of causes more fear and irrationalization? Wouldn't that be against what you are for, which is like a world where everyone can kind of come together, be, peaceful?
Like, I think the police sort of serve 3 primary functions. One is like to uphold racialized white supremacy, protect the interests of the capitalist ruling class, and the third is to like prevent social movements from being able to change anything.
So then if like I'm in my house, someone breaks in, and like I'm in my closet or my bathroom.
Oh, police abolition is destroyed with one simple take from the most normal human being on the planet with the most normal human being consideration. Like, I'm sorry. I know that cops don't do shit. I know. But good luck explaining to a motherfucker that reality. That motherfucker asking that question believes that cops are supposed to be the ones who come. Anyway.
Like, who do I call?
Hopefully not the cops, because they don't really seem to help with that much. I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question. I think there's like a million different solutions. What do we do when harm happens in our community? What do we do when people are committing wrongdoings or whatever? And I think the answer to that is like a million different things, but definitely not the police.
Hey Claire.
Hey Jingy.
Are you enjoying our Ask Me Anything series?
I am. And if you are too, like and subscribe for more videos like this. Now, let's get back into the video.
Have you ever broke anything?
Yes.
What?
I mean,
window.
like,
Bases.
I'm trying to debate on whether or not I should even talk about these sorts of things.
What's the most extreme thing you've done?
Some of the most intense experiences of my life were the resistance against Milo Yiannopoulos in Oakland, who was a right-wing grifter trying to give some public talk that was shut down by anti-fascists.
Like you tried to stop him from talking, or?
Yeah, something to that effect, trying to basically create such a scene that the whole event has to be shut down.
So I guess it's fair to say you don't believe in free speech?
Well, I don't think
sucks.
that everybody has an equal microphone, per se. The sort of abstract notion of free speech is less important to me than the content of what's being shared. And if what's being shared is calls to violence and anti-Semitism and sexism and racism, then I don't give a fuck about your so-called free speech.
Do you think it would be okay to punch a Nazi?
Hell yeah. Yes, absolutely. We should not cede an inch to those bastards, and when they have the gall to step out of their mom's basement or whatever, we do not give them space in our communities to share their disgusting and toxic and unforgivable opinions.
What are your thoughts on peaceful protests? Do you believe in it?
I think a lot of the sort of like proper channels of change, working within the system, like begging the people in power to make a decision that doesn't, fuck everybody over. A lot of that stuff is really degrading. So we're begging them to change the world when really we're the ones, us, you, the person watching this YouTube video, are the ones who have the power to change the world.
What's something you wish people knew about you?
Wow, no one's ever asked me that question before. I'm looking for love in the world, like, in all sorts of forms. Love.
Oh God. I am dying.
Love is the fucking answer.
So
like,
cringe. I'm
loving
sorry.
Each other, loving ourselves, loving the world, and obviously it's not always. Like the world's a sad place sometimes.
I didn't expect you to say you were looking for love in the world. For some
Damn,
reason, that
he's
made me
rizzing her
emotional
up.
for a second. I guess I'm wondering, how do you
She's getting
reconcile the
rizzed.
two? Talking about love a lot, but then also being part of a group that condones violence. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a heavy question. Thanks.
Yeah, the only way to answer that question is the way I explained it. There is no movement without violence. That's it. You cannot do politics without violence. Like, violence is happening to you. Violence is happening around you every goddamn moment of the day. You're just conditioned. You're primed into thinking that it's not real and it's not happening. That's it. Can love bloom on a battlefield? Oh, that's funny. Yeah, she should ask a cop that question, but like, he's looking for love because it's hard to find a partner who can deal with dating a federal agent. Lots of travel, lots of secrets. Poor guy. That and also Havana syndrome. He's not Havana a good time. You know what I mean? He's got Havana syndrome. Luckily, he does have the platinum healthcare package that the government gave him, but Like, what fucking Antifa is like, I'm going on Jubilee. Oh, God, I hope it's not one of you motherfuckers who LARPs as Antifa. I'm going to lose my mind. Holy shit. Violence is not some symptom of problem. Violence is a means to accomplish political action. It is constant. It is tool. It is morally gray. It's just, like, the question is this. There's currently a tropical storm happening in Los Angeles. Okay? The fire department for the past 3 days have been trying to get the homeless people that live on the river basin, on the LA River, which is not even a real fucking river, to leave that area. Some of those people are not going to leave, and they're going to fucking die. What's that? What's going on there? How do you walk the fucking Bloomingdale's or wherever the fuck you go to work or to buy shit, and you see so much? You see a dude who's just like all cut up, bleeding, you know what I mean? Fucking tattered clothing. You see that, like, what do you think's going on there? What's happening there to him? That's violence. What's happening to him is violence. If you were in his shoes, you would think the world is out to get you. The world is trying to kill you, because it is. It kind of is. That is structural violence in the form of extreme poverty. And the state is the purveyor. The state is the reason why this kind of violence continues. The state does nothing to stop it. You know what I mean? That's something you got to mention. Like, Antifa is supposed to be engaging in self-defense at all points. If you want to talk about Milo Yiannopoulos and, like, you know, shutting down that kind of speech, the entire reason why you're doing that is not because you think Milo Yiannopoulos sucks. She does. You're doing that because Milo Yiannopoulos is coming there and making the campus a less safe space for trans students that he's outing on his fucking little show with all the little Nazi friends that he has. Outing undocumented migrants on campus. Doxing people. You can't have that. Fuck a school that lets that shit happen. You know what I mean? That's the type of shit that admitted pedophile was engaging in. Have to take matters into your own hands if petitions don't work in that situation. And it's very dumb that he can't even fucking explain that in better terms. He's acted it out, but he hasn't, like, been able to describe it here. Gentrification is violence. Decades of war on drug before weed was legalized and turned into a lucrative commodity is violence. Disparity between crack and powder cocaine is racialized violence. Redlining is violence. Wage theft is violence. Capitalist exploitation is violence. Not providing universal health care while billionaires get tax cuts. Disparity in sentencing by race and class. The 13th Amendment. Private prisons. School-to-prison pipeline. Structurally underfunded schools in minority and working class area. This is all systemic violence. But exactly because it is systemic, because it is sanctioned by the law, it is by the state, it is done by the state, it is considered legitimate violence, and therefore not violence at all in the eyes of the ideologists of the bourgeoisie. To them, violence can only emanate from the victims of this actual violence. I'll take it also one step further. Something I talk about quite frequently with respect to right-wing reactionary behavior and the types of violence that they want to happen. Part of the reason why it's so easy to be the likes of Ben Shapiro is because all you need to do is basically push in the direction of the pre-existing violence that's already happening and demand more of it. That's all you need to do. The system is already designed to defend police brutality and police violence. All Ben Shapiro can do, all Ben Shapiro needs to ask for is a little bit more of that police brutality. Maybe some justifications for said police brutality. That's it. That's it. Okay? That's all he needs to do. And that's precisely what he does. Because that violence is constant. He recognizes it. He knows it's happening. He wants more of it. He likes it. He wants to justify it. You're on the other side of that conversation. Every action that you engage in, whether it's defensive or even in the very unique instance offensive, but mostly defensive, that action is considered a big no-no. Okay? Sundays are fun days, right? Okay, man, I don't want to hear this bullshit. Okay, I'm like literally fucking dying and I'm trying to describe a very complex concept to you. Please. I haven't done this in a long ass time. Like, fuck. Like the theoretical applications of violence, what violence means. This is important for people to understand. I'm so sick. When you protest this violence in a way deemed unlawful, you're branded an evil Antifa cultural Marxist who will destroy Western civilization and reason itself. For you have committed the irredeemable sin. You refuse to play the game, the one that's rigged against you. Even when your protest to this systemic violence, which continually kills countless millions, but quietly behind everyone's back, is limited to what you are deemed uncivil expressions of it, say it on social media, they brand you as a barbarian. Twitter, Robespierre's, an unruly mob. This is the social function of the ideologists of the bourgeoisie, both conservative and liberal, and within the latter, both the performatively woke and the anti-woke. To obscure the actual systemic violence that emanates from the capitalist system, they owe their social being to. I think weather pressure affects old people's joints. I'm going to fucking shove my dick joint in your mother's pussy, okay? And it will be age appropriate. Fucking asshole. I'm not old, man. I'm literally dying. I'm tired. I'm fucking, Jesus Christ. I'm fucking your mom, asshole. But if you're aware of the magnitude of the violence generated by capitalism every second of every day, as class-conscious workers are, to use an old-fashioned phrase, flare-ups of emancipatory counter-violence aren't signs of barbarism. They're sparks of civilization and hope. And that's how it's always been throughout history. We do not remember the times when the status quo was preserved and those who used their power to ensure it was as some heroic, virtuous moments. No, these came from those who refused to play the game, who rose up to destroy it. That's it. In short, those who took part in the Great Refusal, as Marcuse called it, saw the sickness of society premised on a violence that cannot be named. I keep focusing on this because I don't see anyone else who is at least in this way. Even so-called leftists have fallen victim to bourgeois legalism, separating the bad rioters and looters from the good, peaceful protesters. Bullshit. Read this. These people are risking their lives while all leftist thought leaders know to do is write obscure posts in niche magazines only other postgrads read. Dissent, Mag, and N+1 can fuck off. I admire and respect all protesters, especially the violent ones. They took the greatest risk. Violent here meaning emancipatory counter-violence expressed against corporations, businesses, and statues of racist slave owners. You know, barbarism compared to the systemic original violence of capitalism. Just think of the victims. Really, try to. They don't exist.
You know, the world is becoming increasingly, communities just continue to be targeted, racialized violence happening in the world, gendered violence. And for me, for love to be able to truly proliferate in this world, so many of these systems need to be torn down and so many new ones need to pop up in their place. And I don't know what those new ones are. I don't have an answer for everything, but I know that the way that this world is right now is just not conducive to love.
How do you engage with individuals who don't see eye to eye with Antifa or have a very violent reaction to the words?
That is a very good question. I think it's one that people have been trying to answer for a long time. How do we communicate across difference? Another reason why I don't always think showing up in full black bloc garb is the most strategic is because it makes people assume a lot about you. I put on this mask like less than 1% of the time or something, you know?
Oh, really?
And so many of us are doing so many different types of community organizing.
What do you mean, oh, really? What do you think he's doing? He's just walking around like a ninja? The fuck? He said, oh, really? Yeah, dude, he puts the mask on to go to fucking Target, and he's just slicing and dicing people, you know what I mean? He's just killing cops everywhere he goes.
Work. There's so much more.
First of all, when he doesn't have the mask on, he's doing his day job, okay, as a federal law enforcement agent, okay? So there's that.
More to like building an anti-fascist world than just fighting against fascists.
What is something that you love about yourself?
But one thing I love about myself is that I care. I care about things. My heart gets warmed when I see people in contact with their capacity to be however they want to be in the world, to do whatever they want to do in the world. I'm trying to do that too, you know, I'm trying to come into contact with my source energy or whatever to self-actualize, and it's a really hard, it's fucking hard.
Yeah, I appreciate your answers. It seems like you really took some time to think about some of those.
I may not agree with like everything you stand for, but I think
I'm telling you, the only reason why these guys still don't get it is because propaganda is incredibly powerful, and he didn't do enough to counter it by describing the world and describing the pretext of politics and how it plays a role in the division of violence, who gets to do it and who's on the receiving end of it, and how we work to justify it both internally and also certainly through every kind of media output that we experience. His answer to calling police a million solutions was terrible. Anarchists cannot help their predisposition to acting like a federal agent. Yeah. What? First hurricane, second earthquake, third. Stop.
agree, like for the most part, like just being like a liberal person, I think we both can say that we want the world to be like a better place.
I'm not a person with like very strong political views. My beliefs are do whatever makes you happy as long as it doesn't hurt other people or yourself. Everybody can be happy without harming others at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Brother, you need to understand something.